Welcome back. Today we're joining Drift Cadet down at Calder Park, taking out our RX7. These cars are synonymous for circuit racing and have been for many years. However, they do have their limitations when it comes to drifting. Now that's mainly because in a normal suspension setup, you'd have a McPherson setup. Therefore, the knuckle would normally turn around the center point of the strut. What that allows is lots of clearance behind that suspension area to get lots of steering angle. The issue with the RX7 is that it uses a double wishbone front end suspension. Therefore, there's a lot of suspension parts sitting behind the wheel. So not only does it limit how much steering angle that you actually have, you're limited by the wheels and parts sort of knocking into each other. So the lower control arm sometimes hitting the caliper. And although there are some aftermarket setups like this WiseFab and some JDM versions, unfortunately they are way out of our price range. So we're just going to do the best we can. Track today is Calder Park. We're predominantly using corners 1 through to 13 with that little connection between 13 and 1. In the morning we're going to be running the track clockwise. Then later on in the afternoon we will be running the track anti-clockwise, which makes for a very interesting day, and I'll explain to you why once we get there. Following those first 2 laps, notice that the front end wasn't giving me any feedback. This is probably because we've tried to go with quite a towed out setup in the morning. Probably going to change that over a little bit later on in the afternoon. You'll see me there touching those fuses. Those fuses are for the fans and obviously power the relays. You'll see those 2 little green lights on my dashboard. They're to ensure that the fans are actually running. In the event that those fans do blow a fuse or they stop running at some stage, I have a red buzzer on my dashboard that will let me know. In essence, the car's going quite slow as far as frontal air going through the front end of the vehicle. So being on the rev limiter all day really gets the temperatures up. Now it's time to start running the track anti-clockwise. Makes things very interesting because the first initiation is straight towards pretty much barriers on your left, on your right, and at the end of the track. Between sessions, we've taken the car out into the pits, adjusted that front end alignment. We've gone with a little bit more toe in and now feeling a lot more comfortable with the car. Guys, what an absolute ripper weekend. Hats off to Drift Cadet for hosting the event on Sunday sessions. Car is now officially all loaded up. We have had an absolute blast. Big thank you to Peter, Nelson, Mark, I believe, all the drivers. It was absolutely epic to drive with a whole bunch of people that were pre-qualified to drive. So awesome weekend. Hope you enjoy all the content, and we'll see you again at the next event.